With a mixture of 4-player gauntlet-style brawling and puzzling, Marvel Ultimate Alliance is back with the third installment. But there's a twist. Unlike the last two Activision published games, this is now a Switch exclusive. Published by Nintendo and developed by Team Ninja, it's a fresh start in many ways. The more realistic stylings of the first two games is replaced by cel shading. The effects are as bombastic as ever, and there's a great couch co-op game in here with addictive character progression. Going in then, you'd hope a focus on just one platform would translate to a refined end product technically. In terms of performance and visuals though, Ultimate Alliance 3 really leaves a lot to be desired in getting the best from the system. So what exactly is going on here?
This home is still my happy place.
For context, let's see the last two games in action. 13 years back, Marvel Ultimate Alliance landed on just about every platform going. The Marvel Cinematic Universe hadn't even begun by this point, and the PS3 and Xbox 360 had just entered the market. Sensibly, the baseline target for developer Raven Software was PS2 and PSP, platforms where adoption numbers were still high. For early buyers of next-gen consoles though, Ultimate Alliance also arrived in the nick of time for a decent co-op couch experience. It was slim pickings in terms of game selection in 2006 if you remember that phase of its lifespan. While hardly revolutionary, this game at least put PS3 and Xbox 360 to decent use with a higher res upgrade, improved character models and shaders. Here we have the PS4 re-release which came out years on. Stylistically, it's a very different beast to Ultimate Alliance 3 on Switch. Likewise for Ultimate Alliance 2, it's all very basic stuff. Havoc physics and dynamic lights were the plus points, but given it's fundamentally a cross-gen PS2-PS3 title, it's hard to knock it for what it was. The only major downside is that PS3 struggled to go higher than 20 FPS with 1080p selected. Even a generation on, PS4 can't even stretch to a locked 1080p and 60 FPS. Performance has never been the series' strong point then, which leads us straight on to the third game on Switch. So how does it play? Well, Ultimate Alliance 3 keeps the basic template of the first two. You pick a squad of 4 heroes or villains from the Marvel Universe, run through a series of dungeons, and then finally take out a boss. You discover new characters, skills get upgraded, levels increase, and the attack numbers get bigger, and when your gauge is built up, you have the chance to unleash an all-in-one super attack. It's a satisfying gameplay loop that, despite the basic visuals, definitely got its hooks into me after a while. Ideally, you'll be playing the game with 3 actual human beings though. Playing with a single Joy-Con each works well here, in a pinch, and having a friend over can be a big help to beating some bosses where the ally AI just doesn't cut it. There's a fair bit to cover here on the tech front, but let's talk on resolutions first. You're getting a native 1920 by 1080 in the best case on Switch docked under a TV. The catch there is that the resolution is dynamic. Most basic battles can render at 1080p, but certainly not the most intense stuff. Enter any boss encounter and Switch can veer towards 1600 by 900 and even 1280 by 720 in extreme cases. This Venom and Electro fight gives you that, and when it happens, the drop to 720p tends to stand out. Considering where we came from, this isn't bad at all. We had 1080p on the PS4 and Xbox One predecessors after all. In fact, to dynamically change the pixel output makes a lot of sense for a game with a variable pull on GP resource. I can't help but think this dynamic res system would have worked wonders on the PS4 and Xbox One versions, in clawing back 60 FPS performance. For Switch though, Team Ninja pushes the best frame it can muster at any time. The lack of anti-aliasing does hamper it a bit though. I'm sure you've noticed, but even at 1080p, the dark angular corridors show plenty of stair stepping all over the place, which isn't great. A quick look at portable play next. This is captured using specialized tools, taking a feed directly from our Switch. It shows exactly how it looks on that 720p screen. Obviously though, this is blown up many times, so bear that in mind. The native resolution targets 1280 by 720 at max, as you'd expect, though we also see drops in pixel output under load. In the worst case, that'll go to 960 by 540 or 75% on each axis of 720p. There's some wiggle room then. It's not as variable as docked play in terms of sheer range, but enough to try to mitigate some frame rate drops, though clearly not all. More on that a bit later. In terms of comparisons between portable and docked, that's pretty much it. Resolution boundaries change from a dynamic 1080p to dynamic 720p, while settings are much the same. Shadows, textures, and all the rest stay put. One aspect that does alter though is the lighting. Volumetric lights streak across the tutorial area at the start, and the resolution there adapts with the max output resolution. It always runs at 25% of whatever the highest target res is, whether it's 1080p or 720p. So expect some more obvious stair-stepping on those elements. Volumetric lighting marks a clear upgrade over the last two games in fact, neither of which used the effect extensively. In some respects, Ultimate Alliance 3 has great visual design. The cel-shaded style makes it easy to pick out any character from the maelstrom of superpowers. It's typical to see the screen fill with alpha transparencies and enemies, and this colourful aesthetic makes it easier to decipher. Then again, for a game released in 2019, I did expect more. Volumetric lights aside, it still looks like a game of the early 360 and PS3 era. Character models look a bit bland with their simplistic designs, and environments are often repeated metallic corridors. It's a functional and clear, if also bare bones take on the Marvel universe that doesn't really do anything radically new. There are a few highlights though. By brute force of using pre-rendered videos, the cutscenes are at least cleanly presented, giving us some great punchy lead-ins to every new character. At 13GB in size, the Switch install is bloated a tiny bit as a result. Certainly it's more than the 6GB of the last two games, but it pays off. It sidesteps running all of this in real time. These scenes even add a dash of motion blur and depth of field too, both missing from the main game. That does make me wonder, if not for the exclusivity to Switch, how might a PC version have looked? Could these post effects have been added in gameplay?
Then you're lucky some of us still have a way in.
Focused development on Switch hasn't paid off as I'd hoped. For reference, Diablo 3 might be the closest thing to it in its effects-heavy hacking and slashing. The Eternal Collection landed on Switch a year ago, targeting a full 60fps with dynamic resolution, and it still looks great. Pushed to extremes, it does drop under 60fps, but given the hardware, it's expertly put together by Blizzard. Plus, given this was designed on PC, PS3 and 360 first, and then later found its way to Switch, there's a lot to respect here. Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 by comparison only has one platform to lock down, but it never really shows. Between the flat low-res textures and basic modelling, there's just nothing to celebrate, and that's compounded by the state of its frame rate. Let's take a look at docked performance first. Something immediately feels off, and to be honest, I was surprised to not see more drops on the graph. The reality is though, based on the first 2 hours of playing, you're getting a 30fps cap with frame time stutters. It contributes to the sense this isn't running smoothly, even when it's hitting a 30fps ceiling, though far from the worst I've seen. Camera controls are free most of the time too, so you do get a sense of that judder while spinning your viewpoint around. The drops under 30fps can't be ignored either. I expected to see worse based on the way it felt in play, but the fact is it's hitting the low 20s in docked mode. Now the severity of these drops entirely depends on which heroes you select. Potentially you could push it harder, but I found playing as Scarlet Witch or Groot tees up a lot of different alpha effects in one spot, so definitely brace yourself for around 20fps at worst with these two in play. A bulk of general play does just hold at 30fps, but don't be surprised to see select characters tank performance wherever they go. Playing Switch docked under a TV is just about bearable with its drops, but on the move you're looking at more frequent drops to 20fps. They're often sustained too, in boss fights or anything involving Scarlet Witch. There are points where the game dips under 20 too, which wasn't my experience of playing docked at all, so for sure it's a step back. Moving to a dynamic 720p clearly isn't enough, and even when it's hitting 540p, we're still seeing these drastic lurches. I'm sad to say it does get to a point where it makes the game harder to play, and to be clear, this is running on patch 1.01. That's the breakdown then. Ultimate Alliance 3 is a frustrating one, simply because there's quality in here waiting to break out. The core mechanics are solid, and the cel shading aesthetic works well enough for the series, even if the level design is a tad plain. With that said, there's a genuine appeal to playing with a few friends. It's brutally hard, and more than once, I found myself chiseling away at a boss's life bar for a good 50 minutes only to lose. Being able to coincide attacks with human players for a damage boost is just hugely satisfying, and sometimes crucial to winning.
Never felt such power before.
At a basic level, it's a blast to play through, if also flawed. Frame rate drops are a reality, yes, and especially in portable mode, it left me wrestling with the controls at times. That's really the main gripe, and certainly hard to overlook while playing. It's got to be said though, there's no other console release to jump to for a smoother ride. This is it. So long as you can accept Switch's wavering performance, there's a decent few evenings of hacking and slashing in Ultimate Alliance 3, but go in with your expectations tempered. That's all for today though. If you did find this analysis useful in any way, please feel free to like or subscribe, and of course don't forget to hit that bell to get notifications as any video lands. To get this video at source file quality, just check out our Patreon at digitalfoundry.net, and to get in touch directly, just use Twitter. But from me for now, thanks for watching.